What's up guys, and welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at another Stephen King book review. Today we are looking at an installment from the Bachman Books called Roadwork. So this is the second book by Richard Bachman, which is Stephen King's pseudonym. I'll read you the quick synopsis here of Roadwork. An immovable man refuses to surrender to the irresistible forces of progress. So this book was written in 1981 and has around 270 odd pages, little shorter than 300 depending on which version of the book you have. The protagonist of this story is a character called Barton George Dawes, or Bart for short, and he is around, I think he's about 38 years old in this, so he is quite old compared to a lot of the other Stephen King characters we've met so far. He is a middle manager at a laundrette, and he has this fierce passion to stop this highway extension coming through his city, his town, where this extension is going to be built through where he lives and where he works, and it's going to destroy basically his family life. It's going to destroy his workplace is going to get demolished, and his house is going to get demolished if this thing goes through. But there's something a little bit more to it than that. There's something going on deep within Bart where he just wants this thing to just not happen, basically. So Bart lives with his wife and they have a deceased child. This is a plot point that you don't really know much about throughout the book. Obviously, as you read more, you get more information about what actually happened with the child. Roadwork takes place over a few months, and the way that the book is structured is that we have the end date, I guess, for this highway extension, when it's going to be happening, or when he's going to be evicted, or this house is going to be demolished. And then we start from 3 months earlier, and it's going to be like a countdown, a daily countdown. You see the dates all leading up until this event, so you already have this idea of how much time you have before sort of the climax of the story will be. So that's kind of interesting, and it also gives you a little inclination about how far along the story the character's sort of mental state is, I guess. As we're slowly getting towards the end date of this Roadwork extension, obviously things are getting a bit more pressured for Bart, so I really like the way they structured the book in this way, how we're just counting down the days ourselves just by reading chapter to chapter. The closest thing I could tell you about this book is that it is sort of like Falling Down with Michael Douglas, or Breaking Bad, or American Beauty. It's about a man who kind of goes off the rails and just skews his ideas of what his reality and his lifestyle has been so far, and just goes on his own kind of pathway to getting what he wants, basically. So he wants this highway extension to be stopped, and he has options within his workplace to renovate his building into a different laundrette. He doesn't not want to go with the typical fashion of things, so he has his own way of looking at things. So I don't want to get into too many spoilers about how he works around these decisions, but it's definitely a sort of Breaking Bad moment where someone just kind of just throws out all their ideas about what they should do and what's best for themselves and their family, and go with their own skewed, delusional views of what life should be. I hope that made sense. That was a lot of mumbo jumbo, but yeah, that's kind of what this story is. It's about a man just throwing out his beliefs and just doing what he thinks is right in his soul, whether that affects the people around him, his family and his friends. So he goes on his own little journey. There's actually quite a lot of comparisons in this story to The Shining, obviously not with the Overlook Hotel and the supernatural aspects, but definitely with the way of the characters sort of spiral and sinking into a depression and a psychosis, the way that they're both gradually being grounded down by this force, whether it's a force of a highway extension or if it's just isolation in a hotel. They definitely have some comparable aspects, and it's really interesting to see how the two characters of Jack Torrance and Bart Dawes react with the different scenarios, obviously because there's different things happening in each story. It's a very interesting way to see how the characters are basically changed by different situations. I mean, with The Shining, everyone kind of knows what they've been going into. With Roadwork, I didn't really have a clue about what this was about, so I didn't have the pressure of knowing, oh, this character is going to go crazy and do something really crazy at this point in the story. I just didn't know what was going to happen, so it was very thought-provoking for me to just see where this character was going to go, what sort of angle he was going to go down, and what was going to happen to his mental state as things progressed. There's a lot of realness in this story, and there's a lot of very human and even relatable issues in the story, but one of the things that the story focuses a lot on is the character's bitterness towards the real world, and just how he sees how the real world works, and how money is used, and how businesses really operate, and how he is just been ground down by this view of life, and he's had enough, and he really goes against the grain. And what's very interesting about it also is that us as the reader reading the character I know you're supposed to sort of sympathise with the character and relate to them, but you see the outside view of his delusions and just how skewed his views have become because of this bitterness. So it's like a glimpse into a really negative person's outlook, and where you can relate to it, you can also see the side where they are going too far. The majority of the story focuses directly with Bart. We see other characters like the people in the laundrette and his wife and some other people, but the main focus is we see the inner thoughts and the inner workings of Bart for the majority of the story. We really get to see what he's thinking about at all times, and sometimes it's quite frankly scary what he's thinking about. There's a lot of themes in here, obviously with relationships too, with the way that things are going for him with his family and his work and this extension. There's a lot of strain on his relationship, and it's quite sad and quite emotional to see this couple go through these things, but at the same time you can't really be too angry at some of the decisions that are made with how the characters are acting towards the situation. So it's kind of you kind of thinking, why are you doing this to yourself, or why are you making these decisions when you know it's not going to be helpful for you? So it's kind of like a train wreck in motion reading. One other aspect of the story about Bart's character is that the way his character is written, when he's having these inner monologues and thoughts, I'm not sure if it's supposed to be some sort of split personality, or if it's just his thought process or his way of grieving or something, but sometimes we see multiple voices in his head talking to him, and they're both known as George, which is his middle name anyway, and Fred. So obviously that's a Harry Potter Weasley twins, but they are both given polar opposite views, so it's kind of like the devil and the angel on your shoulder. So he's dealing with his own thoughts, and then this other character of Fred inside his head which is talking. So it can be quite confusing trying to decipher who is talking to each other, and then the overall process of whether he's telling himself Fred is telling him these things to do, if that makes sense. It's kind of like a coping mechanism. He's making himself feel better by saying that someone else is telling him to do these things. Much like the characters in these sort of stories like Taxi Driver or Breaking Bad or Joker, we definitely sympathise with them. We really feel bad for the characters, and they do a really good job of making us feel bad for him, and at the same time just realising that he's doing things that he shouldn't be doing, and you don't agree with a lot of the things he does in the story. And that's what makes him such a compelling character, is because he is this anti sort of hero. You want to see him do things, and he's not doing the right things. So even though he keeps doing things that aren't necessarily good morally, we're always kind of hoping that he's going to make the right decision. And that's one of the most fun things about reading the story, is just seeing where it's going to go, what George or Bart is going to do next. With this being a Richard Bachman story, so his identity of Stephen King was unknown at this time, I believe. There is actually a lot of references to Stephen King books in this, and I honestly think I don't know how people wouldn't have picked up on this. I mean, his writing style is very similar anyway, but there's so many references in this book that a lot of them were subtle, but for me, coming off the back of reading some of them. So here's one example. One character in the story is talking about their child and how they used to get the smell, a phantom smell of oranges, which is obviously a big reference to The Shining with Dick O'Halloran, who whenever he is in a stressful situation or something dangerous is happening, he smells oranges. So that was a big reference to me straight away. There's even a reference to the Mangler, which is in the story in Night Shift by Stephen King, whereas in this story they mention one of the machines in the laundrette that Bart works in, and they called it the Mangler. So is this the same machine? These are two big references to Stephen King. So yeah, I would have imagined a lot of people would have thought this Bachman character would have been Stephen King a long time ago. Now this was written in '81, but now when you see things in present day, like Breaking Bad for instance, when you see these cold opens where you have Walter White just buying a gun or doing something, and you don't quite know what the effects of what they're doing is at that point, but it comes back to it towards the end of the story. This story begins on a segment like that where Bart is buying some equipment from a store, that's all I'll say, and at this point we don't know who his character is really, we don't know anything about him, what his personality is like, and it's just a very interesting way to start the story, because we know that he's going to be doing something with this equipment at some point in the story, and when you go back to where his character is at, then it leads your mind up to a lot of imagination about where this story can go. And I really like it when he does these cold opens, and yeah, you can definitely tell a lot of things like Breaking Bad most famously has adapted this cold open sort of beginning to a story. So this is going to be the end of my review for Roadwork. I hope you really enjoyed it. I loved this story. I was not expecting to like it as much as I did. I think this is probably even better than The Long Walk in my opinion, just for the character of Bart himself. I love these kind of delves into the crazy person's mind as they go on a spiral downwards. And yeah, so just let me know in your comments down below what you thought about Roadwork. And I am now currently reading Cujo, so that will be my next Stephen King review on this channel. So thank you all, and I'll see you guys next time.